HazWoper program. Number 1, general company policy. Plaas Incorporated has developed this program to comply with OSHA's HazWoper standard and to provide general guidance to clean up and/or properly handle hazardous waste at construction sites. Plaas Incorporated personnel will not be involved with hazardous substance emergency control and containment operations. However, Plaas Incorporated HazWoper trained personnel may engage in post-emergency response or cleanup remediation operations, and therefore fall under the requirements of 29 CFR 1910.120. All employees and their designated representatives can obtain further information about this written policy from the manager of safety at the corporate office or from the site foreman. Number 2, general control measures. A work site that meets the criteria of a hazardous waste cleanup activity per OSHA 29 CFR 1910.120 will have established site control measures such as completion of the HASP and establishment of work zones, exclusion, decontamination, and support. B, whenever possible, engineering controls will be used to minimize the hazards associated with hazardous material exposure. Because of variable work sites, work practice controls and the use of personnel protective equipment selected by a hazardous material technicians will be used to control employee exposure. C, the site foreman will have the responsibility of identifying the zones based upon the site conditions. Decontamination areas must be located to minimize the exposure of uncontaminated employees. Decontamination procedures shall be implemented based upon expected exposures to petroleum hydrocarbons, gasoline, diesel, and oils. Number 1, the principal decontamination method is that of dry decon, i.e. doffing the individual's personnel protective equipment PPE after using absorbents to wipe off any free liquids and then properly contain of the PPE. Number 2, if there is the potential for gross contamination, then suitable wash rinse stations will be established to conduct a wet decontamination. Number 3, as a minimum, each work site will be equipped with at least 5 gallons of portable water for gross flushing. Number 4, all employees leaving the contaminated area must be properly decontaminated. Number 5, any contaminated clothing leaving the area will be disposed of properly, cleaned, and laundered. Number 6, unauthorized employees shall not enter or remove clothing from decontamination zones. D, site-specific health and safety plans, HASPs, and work plans will be developed in coordination with host clients and environmental professionals to minimize the physical and health risk. Such risks may pose significant safety and health hazards to our workers and our subcontractors when not properly managed, due to the nature of working with hazardous substance contamination. E, because of the exposures and potential exposures that workers may have performing remediation work tasks, Plaas Incorporated maintains a medical surveillance program that covers the applicable employees involved in HazWoper work operations. Number 3, HazWoper training program. As part of the HazWoper program, the site foreman shall inform workers, including contractors and subcontractors, performing hazardous waste or emergency response operations of the level and degree of exposure they are likely to encounter. Employees at all levels of waste sites will be trained to the level required by their job duties and function prior to performing any hazardous waste operation. A, training makes workers aware of potential hazards they may encounter and provides the necessary knowledge and skills to perform their work with minimal risk to their safety and health. Both foremen and workers must be able to 1, recognize hazards on site and methods to prevent them. 2, select, care for, and use respirators properly, as well as other types of personal protective equipment. 3, understand engineering controls and their use. 4, use proper decontamination procedures. 5, understand the emergency response plan, medical surveillance requirements, confined space entry procedures, spill containment program, and any appropriate work practices. 6, workers also must know the names of personnel and their alternates responsible for site safety and health. B, the amount of instruction differs with the nature of work operations in the job site. Employees must not perform any hazardous waste operations unless they have been trained to the level required by their job function and responsibility and have been certified by their instructor as having completed the necessary training. C, all HazWoper trained employees must receive refresher training sufficient to maintain or demonstrate competency annually. Employee training requirements are further defined by the nature of the work. D, initial training. Number 1, we want to offer the best training for our workers because our employees will only be involved in remediation and will not be involved in emergency control and containment. The initial training consists of 24-hour hazardous material site worker instruction off-site. This training also consists of 3 days of documented field HazWoper experience under the guidance of a trained HazWoper site foreman 29 CFR 1910.120. First responder awareness level. The 4 to 8 hour course for responders who will only attempt to identify the involved hazardous material and then notify more qualified personnel. 3. First responder operations level. An 8-hour training requirement exists, but 24 hours of instruction is highly recommended. This category covers responders who will identify materials, perform basic diking and containment operations, and initiate evacuation. This course requires training in personal protective equipment, decontamination, chemistry, and toxicology. However, employees are taught to respond in a defensive fashion. This course does not qualify them to attempt a patching or plugging operation. Certification is required. Number 4, hazardous materials technician. This is a 24-hour course for workers who will perform the actual plugging, patching, or sealing of a container leaking a hazardous substance. The 24-hour first responder operations class is a prerequisite to this course. Training should include knowledge of how to implement emergency response plans, know the classification, identification, and verification of known and or unknown substances, know how to select and use the proper PPE, and understand advanced containment, decontamination, and toxicology. Certification is required. Number 5, hazardous materials specialist. Additional training beyond the 48 hours required for the responder and the technician levels must be taken in the specialty area of this skilled responder. No specific hours requirement exists, but this individual shall be competent in the chemical, toxicological, and or radiological behavior of the particular material involved. The specialist must be able to develop a site safety and control plan. Certification is required. Number 6, on-scene incident commander. The incident commander must be a graduate of the 24-hour first responder operations course and have an additional training, 24 hours is recommended, in planning, decontamination, protective clothing, and command systems. The commander does not have to receive instruction in the technician or specialist categories. This person must know how to implement the program and system, know how to select and use the proper PPE, understand hazards risk, be familiar with state and federal regulations, and demonstrate knowledge of containment and decontamination procedures. E, management and foreman training. On-site management and foremen directly responsible for or who supervise employees engaged in hazardous waste operations shall receive 40 hours of initial training and 3 days of supervised field experience. They should also receive at least 8 additional hours of specialized training at the time of a job assignment on such topics as the safety and health program, personal protective equipment, spill containment, and health hazards monitoring procedures and techniques. F, qualifications for trainers. Trainers shall be qualified to instruct employees about the subject matter that is being presented in training. Such trainers must have satisfactorily completed a training program for teaching the subjects they are expected to teach, or they should have the academic credentials and instructional experience necessary for teaching the subject. Instructors should be competent in instructional skills and knowledge of the subject matter. G, training certification. A written certificate will be given to each employee and foreman that has received and successfully completed HazWoper training and field experience. Any person who has not been certified will be prohibited from engaging in hazardous waste operations. H, refresher training. Number 1, employees who receive initial training will receive 8 hours of refresher training annually. Number 2, we provide for pre-entry briefing to be held prior to initiating any site activity and at such other times as necessary to ensure that employees are appraised of the site safety and health plan. Number 3, we ascertain that employees are following this plan as they are required to sign off on the site safety and health plan, that they have reviewed and understood the plan. In addition, the manager of safety or his designee performs random inspections of work sites. 4, site organizational structure. A, the foreman assigned to the job is the general supervisor who has the responsibility and authority to direct all hazardous waste cleanup operations. B, the foreman will serve as the site safety and health supervisor who has the responsibility and authority to develop and implement the site safety and health plan and verify compliance. C, operators and laborers may be needed for hazardous waste site operations for post-emergency petroleum hydrocarbon remediation tasks. Plaas Incorporated employees will not be involved in emergency response control and containment operations. D, our organizational structure is reviewed and updated as necessary to reflect the current status of waste site operations. 5, site-specific health and safety plan. A, our site-specific health and safety plan, HASP, is a program that aids in eliminating or effectively controlling anticipated safety and health hazards. The HASP identifies the hazards of each phase of the specific site operation and is to be kept on the work site. The HASP addresses the safety and health hazards of each phase of the site operation and includes the requirements and procedures for employee protection. Employees, for some of the site tasks and operations being conducted, use personal protective equipment. B. It is the policy of Plaas Incorporated that an environmental professional will be on a hazardous waste work site who will be responsible for conducting air monitoring of volatile organic compounds, VOCs, using a photoionization detector, PID. Additional monitoring will be performed as applicable for oxygen, combustible gases, and any suspected or known toxins on site. C. It is the responsibility of the environmental professional on site to perform the sampling and the maintenance and calibration of the instruments. D. At times, a confined space entry may be present on a HazWoper site. Therefore, we have established confined space entry procedures that are identified in the confined space entry program. E. The duration of Plaas Incorporated's work activities on a hazardous waste cleanup site is typically less than a week and commonly only a day in length. Therefore, the manager of safety or his designee does site safety inspections as their travel schedule permits. Random site health and safety plan inspections are performed to ensure their completeness. In addition, communication with the site foreman occurs weekly and the job safety is discussed. Foremen are to correct any deficiencies in site safety as soon as they are detected. 6. Emergency response. According to 29 CFR 1910.120, an emergency response plan shall be developed and implemented to handle anticipated emergencies prior to the commencement of emergency response operations. The plan shall be in writing and available for inspection and copying by employees, their representatives, and OSHA personnel. However, Plaas Incorporated employees will evacuate from the danger area when an emergency occurs at a job site and will not be permitted to assist in responding to an emergency. 7. Site evacuation. Site evacuations created during initial site preparation or during hazardous waste cleanup operations shall be shored or sloped as appropriate to prevent collapse in accordance with Subpart P of 29 CFR Part 1926, see Evacuation Trenching Shoring Written Program. 8. Contractor safety. A. Because we may use contractors or subcontractor services for work in hazardous waste operations, we will inform them of the site emergency response procedures and any potential fire, explosion, health, safety, or other hazards of the operation. B. We routinely make the written safety and health program available to any contractor who will be involved with the hazardous waste operation. 9. Medical surveillance. Any employee involved in remediation or cleanup of a hazardous material who exhibits signs or symptoms which may have resulted from exposure to hazardous substances will be provided with medical consultation as soon as possible following the development of signs and symptoms, and at additional times if the examining physician determines that follow-up examinations or consultations are medically necessary. 10. New technology programs. Plaas Incorporated will attempt to implement procedures for the introduction of effective new technologies and equipment developed for the improved protection of employees working with hazardous waste cleanup operations to ensure that employee protection is being maintained. New technologies, equipment, or control measures available to the industry, such as foams, absorbents, neutralizers, or other means to suppress the level of air contaminants while excavating the site, shall be evaluated. The evaluation will be done to determine the effectiveness of the new methods, materials, or equipment before implementing their use on a large scale for enhancing employee protection. Information on data from manufacturers or suppliers may be used as part of the evaluation effort. Such evaluation should be made available to OSHA upon request.